At Midway USA, we know the AR-15 is one of the most popular rifles in modern American history. Known for its modularity and widespread use, it's often considered essential to any gun collection. The essential things you need to run an AR-15 are usually always in stock during shortages, things like magazines and 5.56 ammo. Whether you're looking to buy a new AR-15 or buy parts for your modern sporting rifle, log on and for just about everything for the outdoors, shop midwayusa.com.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Knives, machetes, saws, and shears, multi-tools, shovels, swords, axes, spears, hatchets, and tomahawks. If it cuts, snips, slices, or chops, Midway USA has it. Find great gift ideas in our huge selection of pocket knives and other everyday carry folding knives. Make a statement or create a family legacy with one of our top-of-the-line hunting knives. We've got a great selection of manual and electric sharpeners, too. For just about everything for the outdoors, check out midwayusa.com. Whether you're just looking to stay warm during a hunt or need maximum concealment, the clothing you wear can make or break a hunt. At midwayusa.com, we understand hunting clothing has come a long way with more meticulously crafted camo patterns, advanced scent control technologies, and weatherproof options to withstand the elements. Hunters have to wait until their favorite season, but shouldn't wait on gear, which is why Midway USA offers super fast shipping. When you're ready for your next system, log on to midwayusa.com.
Outdoor Drive Podcast. All right, guys, welcome back. Dude, I can't keep doing that like that. This is unacceptable.
What? No. What?
I can't do the same intro every single time. Like these people are gonna get sick and tired of it, Steve.
They're already sick and tired. Let them. Just give them what they came here for.
All right, guys. Welcome back to episode 234. We actually are joined by the Anatomy Hunter, Brian and Doris Johnson. Well, Doris isn't really there, but how I met Brian was through Doris at ATA. So this is actually probably one of my favorite podcasts. Like, hands down, they are the greatest people in the world. I had so much fun with them at ATA. I am just truly blessed in the opportunity to be able to stop by their booth and hang out with them, honestly, because it was so cool. And what they have going on, Brian is just a wealth of knowledge with everything that he has. And he's just, his background, and I don't know. It's just, if I'll be a fanboy, I guess I'm a fanboy.
You're a little bit of a fanboy, but
is that okay?
But what a smart guy, man. I literally felt like this guy should have been on a Joe Rogan podcast, to be honest with you. I felt like I needed to take my alpha brain to keep up with him.
Yeah. It's pretty true. Well, you guys need to hear on this, so hold on, bear with us. Let's do a little bit of sweeping into the corners, get the dust out of it. Let's talk about our sponsors, the people that bring us the podcast, kind of the things haven't done really many recaps, and we haven't really talked. We've been going through show season. We're going to actually hear March 9th. It's Birds and Booze, guys, at Waypoint Spirits. If you guys need to get there. If you guys are listening to this, you guys are in the state of Connecticut, come and join us for just an amazing time, guys. We're partnering up with Real Outdoors TV, Mr. Matt Weddish, and Master Distiller of Waypoint Spirits. We're going to go kick it back with him for the day from 4 to 8. It's a pre-ticket sale only. We have all of the links in all of our social media. I'll even post it here below so you guys can click on that. Buy your tickets. It's $30. You get some food, some booze, hang out with us. We're going to do some what is it?
question and answer.
Question and
Q&A.
answer, but we're gonna do a video release of some of the releases of some of our hunting videos and some of the good stuff that we've done in the past couple of years, and just kind of talk turkey, talk shop, hang out, maybe do whatever we do at those things, and then on the 22nd, we're actually going to be at the Connecticut Fishing and Outdoor Show at Mohegan Sun with Real Outdoors TV, and we'll be kicking it there. So make sure to check that out. Those are those events, but they've kind of been keeping us busy. Madman went to Harrisburg. I was in NWTF in Tennessee, so we've been spread out. We haven't even done a show together. We're gonna finish the last one together, which is it's pretty cool. So, anything news? Any good news, bro?
Yeah, our number one killer. Well, number two. Sorry, Kaysen. Sorry, Alexandra Fagan and oh boy, what's her husband's name?
Ryan.
Congratulations on your beautiful new baby.
Congrats, guys. That's awesome.
Killing it.
That's right. The ODD family joined another one.
Yeah. I will say one caution to our listeners. It is skunk breeding season. I've been seeing a lot of dead skunks on the side of the road. So, keep your eyes peeled. Yeah. Yeah.
Stevie, stay in your truck. It's important. Well, guys, first off, we are brought to you by and presented by Huntworth Gear, huntworthgear.com. For all of your camo needs, get more with less with Huntworth. We believe in the Durham pants for early season turkey season. Probably one of the best products in hunting. You want to be a ninja? You wear Huntworth. Nor'easter game calls. Get on over there. Get them in close, guys. Get your mouth calls, your crow calls, pot calls. Got some really good stuff, guys. We're gonna start jumping some previews on some really cool stuff that we got going on over there. Latitude Outdoors, guys. The knee pads. That is the product of the month. If you guys haven't checked them out, probably one of the best things to have as a mobile hunter and a saddle hunter. Great stuff. Get on over there to latitudeoutdoors.com. Check out the stuff that they got going on. Make sure to use the promo code Outdoor Drive on that one. Save yourself 10%. Pretty cool, pretty awesome. Bowhunters United, bowhuntersunited.com, guys. The advocates for us as bow hunters. Some of the good stuff they got going on. That's a free website. Get on signed up over with them at bowhuntersunited.com. What do you think, dude? Anything new? New, exciting? Do anything cool? What's up?
No.
All right.
Just working and waiting for turkey season.
I hear it, bro. I know. I can't wait to hit the road and kind of see what's going on. Watching. Shed hunt.
I just sent my paperwork in from a passport.
Ooh.
So 3 to 5 weeks, I should have my passport so I could head north of the border for spring bear.
Cool. Sick.
So I'm looking forward. Yeah. So
I think I might have to plan a hunt myself. I don't know what though.
The outdoor drives are going international.
Whoa.
Caution board.
Hey. Well, let's get on Brian, Mr. Brian Johnson. Not only is he the man of Anatomy Hunter, but is also, there's a little bit more than you need to know about him. So we'll kick the mic on over to him. Let's go have a good on interview with Mr. Brian Johnson. All right, guys, we are back on the phone with Brian Johnson, the Anatomy Hunter. How are we, Brian?
We're doing pretty good.
Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. I know you're kind of busy sculpting things, and things are going on in the shop and just absolutely chaotic for you this time of year, or all the time of the year. So I appreciate you jumping on with us, Brian.
Oh, I appreciate it. This is my first time to be on a podcast as the Anatomy Hunter, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, have you done any podcasts before in the past?
I did one, and I'm trying to think. I think it was to do with taxidermy. I'm thinking it was a while. It was a number of years ago.
Really?
I did one, and it wasn't big back then like it is now.
No, podcasts are a little bit big, maybe too big. It's tough to kind of put them through the cheesecloth and kind of figure out which one's the best and which one's not. So that's good, but everyone's opinion is good out there. So
Well, we're going to make it interesting tonight. How's that?
That's right. So why don't we
Go.
kick this thing right into four-wheel drive? Why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do, Brian?
Okay, first off, my name is Brian Johnson. I'm 67 years old. I live in Wisconsin, which means I've got green and gold blood in me. We're Packer fans here in Wisconsin.
Go Pack.
Go Pack, go. You got to have the go in the end. You got to get the accent in there with it. And wow, my background goes way back basically in taxidermy. And as we go along, I'll tell you the story in more detail. But in essence, what the anatomy hunter is this. If you go out hunting with a bow and arrow, you're going to watch some videos on how to be the best shot. You're going to go to archery shoots. You're going to be around somebody that really knows what they're doing, and they're going to teach you to be the best archery shot possible. You can have a coach doing that, right? Mine is the same thing, except instead of teaching you how to shoot the bow, I'm going to teach you where to shoot the animal, except not from a broadside view, from compound angles. And then I'm going to explain to you physiologically what happens when you hit a deer in this place or that place, what one type of broadhead does, how some of the inner organs work with each other. And that's what this is about, but it gets into a lot of detail. And so I teach anatomy from what I call hunter's anatomy, not medical anatomy. The difference being, if you're going to be a medical student, go to college, they're going to teach you anatomy and physiology on how organs work, where they're at, and how you fix a person, so to speak, if they get hurt. I'm teaching just the opposite. I'm teaching where the organs are and how they relate to how we can most efficiently kill that animal as quick as possible. So it's a completely different attitude. Nobody else has ever done it and had the approach that I've done. And I'm doing it as a result of my background of what I've done. So, and that's what's brought me to this point.
All right, let's rewind the film. Let's start from the beginning. Brian,
Okay.
Tear us down and really dive into who Brian Johnson is and where this all started. Like, how did you even start into the outdoor world? Like, where did you start? Were you, when you were growing up, were you like very fascinated with this kind of stuff, or how did this all work out for you, Brian?
Okay, I grew up in Janesville, Wisconsin, which is southern Wisconsin. You've heard of Madison. It's just south of Madison. I grew up in a city, and I believe that we're innately, if you're a hunter, it's innate. You're born with it, you want to hunt. When you live in a city, you can't do it. So I'd go to the outskirts of town and shoot chipmunks with my bow in a cemetery there. But anyway, one thing led to another, and taxidermy interested me. So I went from being just a kid that wanted to hunt to be out in the country, and then I wanted to get into taxidermy. And so when I graduated from high school in 1974, I took an apprenticeship in Savage, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis. I worked for a gentleman up there for a year, and I learned to do taxidermy. And so then I moved back to Wisconsin, and I ended up setting up my own taxidermy business in Madison, and then had one in Spring Green. We were one of the bigger taxidermy shops in the state. But what happened was this. Back in those days, now remember, that goes way back in the 70s, the taxidermy mannequins that you could buy, and the taxidermy mannequins, what the taxidermists take a skin and they put it over there to create the shape of the animal. They were very poor. They were very crude. So at that point, I started sculpturing them myself. And that started the journey of transitioning from being a taxidermist to a taxidermy sculptor. I then ended up selling my taxidermy business to Reinhardt. Now, the Reinhardt Target, was founded by a guy by the name of John Reinhardt. John Reinhardt had a taxidermy supply business. He bought out my taxidermy business. I taught his son, Dan, and then I went to work for him as a taxidermy sculptor, and that was way back in the 80s. So I did that, and during the process of that, I got into sculpturing animals in different ways. I started chainsaw carving. We started the first licensed chainsaw carving school in the United States called the Wisconsin School of Chainsaw Carving. And eventually I started my own taxidermy supply business. Reinhardt ended up selling his taxidermy supply business to Mackenzie. You've all heard of Mackenzie Targets. Mm-hmm. It's the same Mackenzie. So that opened the door for me to start my own taxidermy supply company. In that it still is called, it's Revolution Taxidermy Supply. So I started Revolution Taxidermy Supply doing that. And then as I was working for Reinhardt, I had the idea, let's start an archery company. And he didn't want to do it because there's another company before 3D archery really took on. There's other people that had tried to do it and they failed. Well, then 3D archery really took on from a guy in Iowa. There's a gentleman in Iowa, I forget his name, but he's the one that was kind of the father of 3D archery, turning it into a big thing. So then as a result of that, we got that going, and that became Reinhardt Archery Targets. So, and then what's happened with that is he sold that business to his daughter, Barbara, and her husband, James. The two of them run it. So, and so I continue to work for them, doing the sculptures for them and inventions for them. That's that part there. But during the meantime, I started my own taxidermy supply company called Revolution. I ended up selling that to Mackenzie. So if you go to any Mackenzie catalog now, which is like the Walmart of taxidermy, you'll see Revolution Taxidermy Supply there. And that was my company they have there. Well, now, to bring us to the Anatomy Hunter, because I know I'm saying a whole bunch of stuff like, guys
are like, whoa, he's been through everything.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. It's just hard for me to keep track of it because we're always on the move doing something. We don't stop. Well, what ended up happening is during my process of sculpturing, I've never lost that attitude of a little kid. Why? What about this? And so I'm constantly I always try different things. I fail all the time, but failure is the price of success is my motto. So I'm learning how to make fiberglass molds. I'm learning how to make better sculptures. I'm learning to do anatomy. I mean, when we did our sculptures for taxidermy, we didn't copy other people's forms. And that's mostly what people do. They take other people's forms, they change them a little bit, they do it. We went back to the blood and the guts and carcass casting the animals. And I mean, I can show you videos where we actually take a bear and we burn the fur off the bear. We put him in a freezer in the middle of winter. We stand him up so he balances perfect where he's frozen so then I could carve him and mold him. And hours and hours and hours of plaster and fiberglass and blood. But it's all doing our own research. So the things that I've learned myself. It hasn't been taught by somebody else. Well, what happened along the way is doing the research as being a hunter and studying animals from the outside, making archery targets, from the inside of the carcass, which is what we do for doing taxidermy mannequins. I've always asked the questions, why does an animal die when it gets hit here? Why does it seem to be hitting the exact same spot it doesn't die? So we started studying the anatomy of the organs, started doing research there, went to the universities of the anatomy departments in St. Paul and Madison, asking questions. And I ended up coming up with a patented idea, which we had patented. And what the idea accomplishes is, it's complicated, but it can tell you as a hunter, no matter how high you go in a tree, no matter what the angle the deer is turned, I can tell you within a quarter of an inch what the perfect shot is to kill that animal. It's scientific, it's patented. So what happened is I went to Reinhardt, and this is all public knowledge. I went to them and I said, look what I've invented. This is a great thing. Let's do it. They're business people, and my patent is scientific. It's very complicated, and it wasn't what you would call consumer friendly because you've got to use levels and lasers and do things to do it. But it's going to teach you scientifically what that perfect shot is. So they didn't want to do it. I very much wanted to do it because I believe I'm going to change archery with it. And so they basically, I started making my own line archery targets while I'm working for them, which I didn't want to do. But anyway, one long story short, I started getting big enough that they ended up buying me out. And then they own the patent. Well, what ended up happening was they still didn't do anything with the patent for the same reasons. That it was complicated. Well, here's what happened. My wife and I were out in Montana, and we called an elk in. It was just an incredible story. I'll divert a little bit and tell it because I think it's exciting enough even to hear it.
Absolutely.
So we were walking out in the open on top of a mountain flat. This was in Montana, and I never walk out in the open. I'm paranoid being in the open, but I had to because there's some elk down below us, and we had to get away from the timber so we could see them. And all of a sudden I looked ahead and I saw a rack. I just see the silhouette of the main beams up. And I said, Doris, down quick. And we just dove down in the middle of it. It's basically prairie on a mountaintop, but there's a pine tree there. So we dove down behind it. And Doris said, get the hat out. We sculpture a ton of different things, but we make decoy hunting hats. So one of them is an elk hunting hat. But instead of wearing it on your head, which you can, what we did is we made a handle with Velcro that you can put the handle inside the hat. So what she did, and it's the first time we ever got to do it. So I mewed. So now that catches the attention, right? And if you've elk hunted, that elk come in, they hear the cow or they hear the bull and they go, where are they? They don't see them. They take off. So our theory in this worked is you wiggle the bush to catch their attention, and then you stick the hat out and you have the hat sideways. So they're seeing the side profile of the head, and then you turn it and you face them eyeball to eyeball. Now you're making contact with the bull. You lift the hat up to show that you're alert. You turn it around and you pull it away like you're walking away. So now he's seen the face of a cow elk that made the mew. And we're out in the open. He's 100 yards away, and here he comes. And we're like, what are we going to do? I mean, we're out there. We're behind a tree, so there's no way we can shoot him. He's got us pinned down, but he's curious. What is this cow elk? What's this all? So the next thing you know, I'm down on my knees. Doris is in front of me. She's got the hat out, and I look, and I can see just his legs, like 10 yards from me through the trees. But I mean, I can't shoot. I could just see his legs. It's that thick. So then what ended up happening? Yeah, so he looked at her from one side. Then he went around the bush, which is on my side, to take a look at it from the other side. So when he did that, I drew. When I drew, he caught the movement. He jumped back. I knelt up a little bit. I put the pin on him, and I shot. And I saw the arrow pin cushion him. You know, it went all the way through, but it's hanging off the other side. Perfect. He goes out there. I go, we got him. He's going to drop. Doris drops the hat, picks the camera up. And so I've got all the proof of this on the video. We've got the best cell phone camera that you could have. And so we've got the blood coming out exactly right. He's going to drop. I'm on cloud nine. I got an elk because, I mean, to get an elk on public land is very difficult for my wife and I. We're not great elk hunters. Anyway, we got him. And he just went where he disappeared a little bit over our eyes. I'm going to go back to camp and get our stuff to get him out. So we go back to camp. I went back to camp. It took me 2 hours to get back there to get stuff, came back. Long story short, he stands up when we're there in front of us and he starts walking right at us. And I'm freaking out. What am I going to do? That can't be. He's dead. What? And he's coming right at us. I got to put another arrow in him. I was in disbelief and I'm looking for this hole in him. It's not a hole in him. Well, I can't shoot a second elk. I mean, it was a quick decision I had to do. So I let him pass. And it turns out it was a different elk. So anyway, we knew he was dead right there. So we took our stuff. We went up there, had the camera all ready to take the kill photos and stuff. He wasn't there. This is out in the open. This is open prairie. There's no way for him to go anywhere to disappear. This is 100 yards, 120 yards. He's got to be dead right there. I got the video showing the perfect double lung shot. He's not there. We end up spending 3 days. And we couldn't find him. Now, remember, I'm into this anatomy. I've got this patent. I blow lungs up. I study them. I take the meat off of ribs. I count what rib, where the heart is at. I mean, just go crazy doing my own research on this. And I can't find this elk that's out in the open. And I'm in disbelief. And I know he's dead right in front of me, but I just can't see him. There's no way he's not dead. And I went back and looked for birds. We did everything we could. So I went to the people that I've hunted with out there that are in the Forest Service. And I said, can you help me find him? Because they could have dogs. Well, I don't know if that's legal. They didn't want to do it. I said, I'll give you $500. And it wasn't because this was just a raghorn. It wasn't because it was I needed to know, because this anatomy hunter of who I am, Trevor, this is who I am. I needed to know. And here was the question that was in my mind. Randy Ulmer, if you know who Randy Ulmer is, he's in, I believe, the World Archery Hall of Fame, the World Hunting Hall of Fame, and he's a large animal vet. So in my world, he's a small G god. There's nobody that I respect more than has the anatomical, physiological, and archery background and experience than Randy Ulmer did. He told me at a show that if you hit an elk through the tricep is the muscle that causes the crease, like you put the arrow, like a lot of people shoot right in the crease, right? Well, the muscle that causes that crease, it's 3 muscles together, it's a tricep. You can put an arrow through that tricep, double lung that elk, that hole will close back into it, which we'll get into later when I start asking you questions, how animals die and why. And that animal can live, double lung shot. And I don't believe that, but who am I to tell the number one man in the world that I have the esteem for, who's the expert, who's got the experience, who am I to tell him he's wrong? So when this happened in this elk I shot, guess what's going through my mind? Could this be a double lung animal that lived? So I was just spinning in my mind. I literally went to these guys, this office there in the Forest Service in Montana, and I literally was crying tears. I mean, like I said, this is innate. This is within me to do this, Trevor and Steve. This isn't just, I'm doing this for no money at all. This is a thing of my life that I'm wanting to accomplish, that this goal I'm doing. So I went to him. I offered him $500. No. $1,000, $1,500. I offered him $2,000 if they could find that elk, because that, you know, they're this department of the timber was in their department, so they could go there and do their work. Do it. Well, what happened is now they didn't do it. Well, they wouldn't do it. So I was devastated. I had an antelope tag. I went antelope hunting, but I couldn't do it. I mean, I was just beside myself. So we got back home to Wisconsin. I'm talking to my son on the phone goes out there with us elk hunting. He doesn't hunt, but he just goes out there for a couple of days to experience it. So he was out there. We told him all about this. You didn't find him. I'm talking about it. I drive in my daughter's driveway, hang the phone up with my son, and I hang the phone up. I see I got a message. And the message was, "We found your elk." Tears to my eyes now. I can't tell you what that did to me. Nothing to do with it being big, nothing to do with it being a trophy, but it has everything to do with me in the anatomy hunter and what this is all about. They found him. He went a quarter mile. They videotaped where the arrow went out, which I didn't have that on video, but I saw it. I saw where the arrow came out. And we can go into the depth of why, but he had went a quarter mile. And this is after he was right out in the open and he stood there for a long time. And I've got it on video. You can see his rack standing there. So how could that be? So, and now let's flash back. Now, if you can hold that in your mind, that was a year and a half ago that happened. Now, remember, I had sold my archery company. It's called Masterpiece Archery Targets. You go to the Reinhardt catalog now and you'll see the Masterpiece series by Brian Johnson. It's still there. But remember, my patent was sitting on a shelf. It wasn't being used at all because it was complicated. And I understand from a business standpoint, it may not be worth it money-wise. I'm doing it because it's a passion of who I am, to kill animals and not wound them. That's my whole deal. I'm going to teach you how to kill animals, not wound animals, period. End of matter. So I went to them and I was going to ask them, and again, my wife and I are born-again Christians, and I believe this whole thing, Anatomy Hunter, is of God leading us to do this, and I don't expect anybody else to believe that. But we went to him, to James, he's our boss that we do the sculptures for, that I wanted to take 2 years off to pursue this anatomy, which I dropped when I sold the business. Well, that's when, remember, COVID was bad. And the businesses got hit hard because with archery target businesses, they had contracts, right? They had all these contracts that they got to sell all these targets. COVID hit, things shut down production. And guess what happened? The price of foam went up. So you've still got a contract to sell products at a loss. So it was a hard time. And again, this is all public knowledge. So when I went to ask for the 2 years off, he interrupted me and says, "I want to give you 2 years off, but I'm going to knock, this is public, I'm going to knock $75,000 a year off your pay. So this is costing me, you know, I could have said, no, I've got a contract and I could have been a jerk about it, but remember, I wanted off. So it's costing me these 2 years, $150,000 for me to start this anatomy hunter. And I have no goal or purpose of making money at this. I've got 2 years to get it up and going. After that, I want to see if I can at least get it where I don't lose money. But that is what caused this to start. Is I had the patent that wasn't used and I shot that elk. And then why did that elk not die? What happened? So, and that's what causes me to deal with when you see where animals are shot, they got hit here. Why did that one live? And the one shot right next in the same spot didn't live. It died. Why? That's what I'm dealing with. And the deal with, if you want to, going into why my elk went that far when it was double lunged. But
why was it?
Into physiology.
Why was it? Yes, I want to know. Like all we're on the edge of our seats, pins and needles.
All right.
Why did it live?
I talk too much. Since I talk too much, what I'm going to do is this. I teach by asking questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to flip the screen around and I'm going to talk to you and Steve, and I'm going to ask you guys questions. Okay? Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Take the bull by the horns. Let's go.
If I make fun of you, is that okay?
Oh, I love it. Please. We need it. You know, a humbling moment like this is probably pretty good. So we'll take it, Brian. I love it.
Well, remember, I challenge people to challenge me to prove me wrong because I want to be perfect. I have no dog in the fight except perfection. And when I get proven wrong, oh, guess what? I'll change. Oh, I was wrong. I'm sorry. You're right. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So now, question. When an animal is shot through the lungs with a broadhead, why do they die? Versus shot through the liver versus shot through the heart. Why? Now we're dealing with the physiology of death. So that's the category we're talking about now. The physiology of death.
Is it because the lungs cannot gain oxygen?
Okay, what do you think, Steve?
I think it has something to do the entry and exit wound. The diaphragm can't build pressure, I believe. It has something to do with that. So, because the cavity is punctured, right? So the diaphragm, when the diaphragm goes to move to suck air in, it's actually escaping out the entry and exit wounds. So if those holes were to get clogged up, the lungs wouldn't collapse, right?
Okay. So how does it done on? No. We're all there. So how does that kill them? Because people think that they can't breathe. Well, you watch a deer when they're shot through the double lungs, they generally run, I'll say, an average of 100 yards. They fall down, they try to get back up, they falter, and they're done. Or they'll run a little ways, 20 yards, and they'll stand there for a while because, I'll get into why that is. And then they get wobbly legged and they drop. But you never, ever see them gasping for air.
Lack of oxygen in the brain?
Now, I'm supposed to catch you on this. You're absolutely correct. But, how and why is the lack of oxygen to the brain? Which, by the way, a physiological thing's kind of neat. When you get that way, what happens, and Randy Elmer taught me this, you faint, right? You know why? I don't know if that's why, but what happens is now instead of gravity pumping the blood up, or your heart having to pump the blood up to your brain, you're laying down so it goes easier. So that's when you faint, you fall down. That allows you to have oxygen there. But you are right. It is the lack of oxygen to the brain. But we got to go and get understanding. The Bible says get understanding of what are the causes of the lack of oxygen and how it works, because it's going to be different than what you think. So go through the things that you've said. You've got pieces of the puzzle that you're absolutely right on. But now we got to put them together. See, and this is the fun part for me teaching, because I can ask questions and try to kind of lead you guys where it is. So now let's take a look at why, when they're shot through the lungs, would they have a lack of oxygen versus if, like I said, shot through the heart or shot through the liver, through just bleeding. What causes that lack of oxygen? Steve dealt with it.
Yeah.
Points.
I just can't put my thumb on it, but I'm guessing the oxygen that's being created in the lungs is now escaping out the entry and exit wounds and not being able to get pumped. It's not getting delegated to the proper location.
Okay. All right. How about you, Trevor?
I want
to go real slow here because this is very important, because I'm going to say some things, depending how far we go with this, people are going to say are not true, because they don't make sense if you don't really understand the physiology of how this works.
Well,
very hard for me to understand.
So other than like if they were shot in the heart, then it would be lack of blood to all the the proper thing. So it's the lack of oxygen. So when it collapses the lung, it shoots the lungs, and then they can't build up to then pump the air to the to the brain or whatever. So they're actually escaping. I'm going along with what Steve kind of said. Like, you puncture that diaphragm, it starts to, once you punch a hole in it with it being so soft, they can't build up. Like lungs will kind of like balloons, right? Will blow up, and then it's going to escape, and it's not going to the right extremities, I guess we could call it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go into what happens when that arrow goes through in a double lung shot, because this is going to get into, as we go on the show, into broadheads. Because remember, I'm trying to teach you to kill an animal. So the broadhead that you use in certain circumstances where you aim at the animal, I've got in two categories that you've never ever heard of before. So let's go to how the lungs work. The lungs, because it's you're close, but you're 180 degrees the wrong way. The lungs sit inside what's called the thorax cavity. So let's just get the basic anatomy. You have the diaphragm. The diaphragm backwards has the liver attached to it in the middle, and it sits on the right side. Then you have the paunch or the rumen or the stomach that sits up against the liver and off to the left side of that. And then you have the intestines above and behind that, and then the kidneys up above. That from back there, that's called the abdominal cavity. That's behind the diaphragm. From the diaphragm forward, that is the thorax cavity. That cavity is split in half into two cavities, the right and the left, like the right and the left lung, and they're called pleural cavities. Now remember, I'm not just teaching this for anatomy. This is hunter's anatomy to give you understanding to help you kill these animals, okay? Because this has to do with broadheads. You're going to really see if you understand this, okay, where I'm going with this. But let me ask you another question. What causes the lungs, they're balloons, you're right, what causes them to be inflated? Let's go through that. Let's get some basic information, because you're going to have a hard time with this one, because you're going to tell me it's the diaphragm. So explain to me how the diaphragm has the lungs inflated. And then I'll show you a question that won't make sense to you. Come on now.
You know, a couple minutes ago, I felt like a pretty smart guy, but after talking to Brian for a little while,
remember that humbling part? Remember that humbling part we were talking about? Go ahead, Steve, please.
No, please go first. I'd love for you to go before me.
No.
What causes the lungs, the balloons, to be inflated?
So when you, isn't it? It comes from the inside, like breathing in.
Okay,
It's killing me.
No, this is good, because if I explain how they die hitting them, if you don't understand how they work, that's getting the cart ahead of the horse. So this is very important. And this is the basic physiology of the lungs. And this is the information that hunters need to know, because it makes a difference. It really does.
Is it similar, just like in an air system in a house where you have to have like a positive and negative return? So when the diaphragm moves back, you're opening, you're essentially making the cavity larger.
Yeah.
So when you make it larger, that space has to get filled.
Oh man.
So you're sucked.
Can I tell you? There's a scientific law that you just explained, and that's part of it. And you know what it's called? It's called Boyle's Law. You just explained on your logic, because you use logic and reasoning, and you came up and defined Boyle's Law. That's really good. I'll get into it in more detail here. But there's going to be some things we keep going that you're not going to be able to get. Okay. Well, okay. So the cavity gets bigger. Okay. And what happens is when a given space is enlarged, you take a given space and you enlarge that space, that creates a negative pressure.
Right.
And the positive air pressure, which is the atmospheric pressure that you're breathing right now, comes in and fills that. Okay. So how that works on the lungs. Now, physiologically, here's how that works. Your diaphragm is dome shaped, and it's actually pushed up inside the lungs. The lungs don't go straight across. It's like a soccer ball is inside your lungs. It's dome shaped on the inside. That's the shape of the diaphragm. So when the diaphragm pulls and flattens out, in other words, it pulls back. We're vertical animals, deer are horizontal animals, which gets into how you shoot them when they're hunched over. There's so many neat things where this goes to. But when you breathe, your diaphragm pulls downward, okay? And at the same time, your intercostal muscles, that's nothing more than when you eat the rib meat on a deer, those are your inner and outer costal muscles. It's just the rib meat. They pull up and out. So what happens is your ribs go out, and all you got to do is when you're sleeping at night, I do this all the time. I put my hand on my chest. I got my wife next to me when she's sleeping. So I get to physiologically actually examine short breaths, deep breaths, chest getting bigger, getting smaller. But at the same time, the ribs pull up and out. The diaphragm pulls down. That makes that thorax cavity, that's from the diaphragm for the lung, that makes that cavity bigger, and air rushes in. And that takes the lungs and that expands the lungs, and that makes them get bigger. They expand bigger. That's called inspiration. Okay. Now here's the question. Because you got that. I'm shocked. I mean, without ever having read that, having the logic and reasoning that you did, Steve, is incredible. But here's the question you're not going to get. When your diaphragm goes back and you exhale, expiration, when you exhale, now you're breathing normal atmospheric air because your lungs want to equalize the pressure of the air you're breathing. Boyle's law, cavity gets bigger, air comes in. But now when you breathe out, your lungs, the air should go out of the lungs and the lungs should collapse because there's what's keeping, in other words, you are right on inspiration, what causes them to expand, to get bigger. But when you exhale and the air's out, your lungs still stay inflated. Now that's the one you're not going to be able to get. You try that because it's a crazy thing. I read on this hours and hours. I don't understand it. I can teach you and tell you, but I haven't grasped the understanding.
Is it a balance?
What it is, I might give you some tries, but you'll never.
Right.
Well,
I think you'll be able to get it.
I have some follow-up questions though, because there's a change going on there, right? Because we're breathing in oxygen and carbon dioxide's going out.
Correct.
There you go.
So that oxygen's going into the lungs and then it's getting distributed to the blood, correct? Because you're oxygenating in the blood.
Yes.
So how's that? Where's the carbon monoxide coming from?
In the same way, my understanding on that is in the same way in the little capillaries that are inside the alveoli in the lungs.
Yeah.
They're so fine skinned that the oxygen can go through that into the blood and the carbon dioxide can come out and go through that skin and go into the inhale and exhale process. It's just amazing. That's something, there's a skin there and it can just go right through that and do that. It's just, to me, unbelievable how these things work. My wife and I just love studying this because we have an interest in how can these things be? How can these things be? But remember, I'm teaching this all how it relates to you as a hunter to kill the animal, not as a medical student to go into detail in too far. You know what I mean? Because otherwise I'm going to bore people to death. Everything to me is, what difference does it make to me? What do I care about this? And where we're going with this, it is going to make a difference as you as a hunter. So when you breathe in, let's go back. Your rib cage goes out, your lungs, your diaphragm pulls back. That makes the thorax cavity bigger. That's Boyle's law that says when you increase a given space, that makes a negative pressure. The positive pressure of the atmospheric pressure automatically fills it. You don't have to breathe it in. It just shoots in. But when you breathe out, now your lungs are going to go down. They're not going to be as big, but they're still going to be inflated. They don't go down. When you got a deer, the lungs are down to about 20% of what they are when they're alive, right? So the question is, well, when you exhale, why don't they go down that small? And this is the deal, and this is what comes into broadheads. And this is a wild thing, and especially when you put a broadhead through there. Let me go back here. You think you pop a balloon and the lungs collapse because you pop the balloon, right? Right? The lungs a balloon. You put an air through the lungs that collapse them. No, that's not it. That's not it. Popping the lung can have something to do with the lung collapse, but it has very little to do with it. I don't know what percentage, but very little. Now that's really getting confusing, right? But how that works and where that is with the answer of why they stay inflated when you exhale is this. On the outside of the lung is a membrane. I can't see it. I've studied it. It's called the pleural membrane. It's in an envelope that's also on the inside of the rib cage. Okay, like when you butcher animals in there. That acts as a sock. So when the lungs expand and contract, it's an abrasion. To me, it's like a sock, so it doesn't rub the lung up against the rib cage. But in that space, and there is no space, but in that space, it's called the pleural space. It's a space between the outside of the lung and the inside of the rib cage. That tiny space, and there's no gap there, that is a negative pressure. And that negative pressure actually vacuums the lungs to the outside of the rib cage. No, to the inside of the rib cage. It has them pulled tight against it on the whole outside and to the diaphragm. That's that negative pressure. And that's the pleural space. It's a crazy deal because they call the pleural cavity is the right and left lungs divided by a wall, which we'll talk to later. And that's called the pleural cavity, but the pleural space is that space there. Now let's go through when you shoot an arrow through. Oh, okay. In other words, to answer the question, I got ahead of myself. When you exhale, which keeps your lungs inflated, is that pleural space, that negative pressure, has them vacuum sealed, so to speak, to the inside of your rib cage. It's just when it gets bigger, when you breathe in Boyle's Law, it makes them bigger. So the lungs will move. And a friend of mine shot a deer. This brings up another point. The one that I had at the show you saw, Trevor.
Yep.
Trevor. It was at the 10.5. I call them the Randy's doe, the 10.5 rib doe.
Oh, yes.
He went between the 10th and the 11th rib, and he hit the rear of the lung there. Nobody believes the lungs went that far back. The next week we went out, he shot one at the 7th rib, and he hit the lung in the exact same place.
Boat Trader, America's largest boating marketplace, offering easy financing and over 100,000 boat listings to choose from. Sell, find, and finance new or used boats on America's largest boating marketplace. Visit BoatTrader.com to get started.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
Hunting boots are a critical component of any successful hunt. Whether walking a short distance to your blind or trudging miles through rugged terrain, your feet are carrying the load. Without the right boots, you could give up early and lose out on that trophy just over the ridge. At Midway USA, we make selecting boots for your next hunt easier. With just a few clicks of a mouse, you can decide on what's important, like waterproofing, insulation, size, width, and savings. For just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors, check out MidwayUSA.com. Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
That's how come I can't sculpture the lungs perfectly, because the lungs are moving. They're not stagnant. I can't say this is where the lung is, this is where the liver is. It's moving. It's moving depending on different things. And that has to do with, again, as we're learning all this to help the hunter to become more educated to make a better shot. Here's what happens when the broadhead goes through now. It's the hole that you make on the outside of the, on the inside of the rib cage before you hit the lung, that breaks that air cavity. You remember you guys were saying air was coming out?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the opposite. There's a negative pressure inside that cavity, and that sucks air. And you've heard of a sucking chest wound. They call it a pneumothorax. There's 3 types of pneumothorax. A tension pneumothorax is the one that we deal with here. There's the pressure inside the lungs is sucking those lungs out. And when the diaphragm pulls back, it pushes any air in there out. But when you put a hole in that side there, a big hole, then the air, because of the negative pressure, comes in, and that literally puts pressure on that lung, and it pushes the lung in, and it actually collapses it from the outside, not like a balloon popped from the inside. Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
It is. Now, where I'm telling you something that's not totally true is, if you shoot it through the lungs in the deer, when the deer runs, okay, they die quicker when they run, right? They go farther, but they die faster than if they just stand there in a shorter period of time. Well, when they're breathing, 2 things are happening. They're sucking air in as they're breathing, and that is bringing air through the lung with the hole in it. Now, he's got a broadhead hole in it, right? Mm-hmm. So that air is coming through that hole, but it's getting to the outside of the lung, the outside that's putting pressure there. And then as they're breathing, as that diaphragm pushes out to exhale, when it sucks in and pulls back, now instead of sucking it in through your mouth, it's sucking it through that hole in the side. And that's that sucking chest wound. And that's what brings the air in. And that's where the bigger the broadhead, the better, that goes in, and that pushes that lung down, which is going to go back to my elk. Why did that not happen with my elk? And I got a lot of stuff I can tell you about that. So now that lung starts collapsing from the air that comes in through the arrow through the broadhead hole, and that literally pushes the lung down. But now remember, if that diaphragm comes back up, when it pulls back, if it doesn't suck air in, if that hole gets covered up, if there's fat there, if there's blood there, and if it comes back up, guess what it can do? When the diaphragm pulls up, it can actually push that air back out. Now, let's give some understanding here of if you're wounded on first aid, what they tell you to do. Like say you fell down, right? Let's say you're at work tomorrow, Trevor, and you accidentally stick the knife in your side, right? Oh man, now you got air that's coming in that could cause a pneumothorax. So what you do is when you breathe in, you get a credit card and you put it over that hole so air can't get sucked in. But when you exhale, you lift the credit card up so it can, because the object is to get that air that got inside there out. Now, a personal story. My son was born 2 pounds, 15 ounces. He was on a ventilator machine. As a result of the hospital, and I don't fault anybody, but the pressure got too much and it collapsed his lung. So what they did is they put a breathing tube, or not a breathing tube, they put a tube in the lung because there's moisture, there's fluids that build up. In that air that's in there, it's got a one-way valve on it. So as he breathes out, it can push the air out, but not air in. So it's the air coming in, which is why we get into broadheads. The bigger the hole, the more air gets in there, it's going to collapse them lungs quicker. And that's going to cause quicker death. Now, that is separate than what causes the lack of oxygen to the brain. But what causes the lack of oxygen isn't in the lungs. It's at the heart cannot get the blood. The lungs actually decrease in pressure, but the heart increases in pressure. So what you said, Trevor, what both you guys said is totally right. I'm just giving you understanding. It's the blood loss from the double lung shot, and it is the oxygen that cannot get pumped because now the lungs are not making oxygen in the bloodstream there. So as a result of both of them not giving oxygen to the brain, down they go. The question I have, and I don't know if it'll ever be answered, is when a deer is double lunged, and I'm using the deer as an example, how much of its death is caused from the lack of oxygen from blood loss versus from lung collapse? And I don't know that question can ever be qualified because it is a combination of both of them. Now, let me ask you a trick question now. Okay. On Randy's doe that you saw at the show there, right? And to tell everybody that's watching this, I had a video at the show in St. Louis, Missouri, where you could watch animals being shot. And then I had a model there of a mounted deer and I had an arrow put in the same spot. And then I asked them, is this a kill shot or not a kill shot? And what organs were hit and how far will it go before it dies and how long before it will die. Now, when you double lung a deer, as a general rule, you have a spray of blood that comes out, right? It sprays. It's a mist kind of on the ground when they run, right? And you'll see bubbles in the blood. Mm-hmm. Randy hit that doe. And now I've given you some information. So this question, hope you might have a chance of getting this. He hit it between the 10th and the 11th rib at the rear of the lung. I mean, he had just the broadhead through the end of the lung. That's it. The deer ran away. He used a big broadhead. It cut a big, beautiful hole in it, but not a drop of blood came out. There was no blood on the outside of it. None. Now think about what I taught you and think, how could that be? And why would that be on a rear lung shot? There's absolutely no blood. See, and this is where it comes into the hunter. It's going to help you when you're tracking a deer. Why would that be of what I said? That there'd be no blood coming out of that hole. I mean, none. I mean, none. Now, the key is he hit it in the rear of the lung. He hit it back.
Is that because it didn't deflate, which it didn't relieve the pressure of the lungs, which then increase the pressure of the heart so that it wasn't like increasingly pumping the blood more?
I'd have to think about that. That could be, but that's not the answer the teacher's wanting.
Okay.
Okay. Now, what do we say one of the causes of death is when they're shot through the lungs?
Lack of oxygen in the brain.
Well, that's the result.
Oh, sorry.
But what causes that lack of oxygen is the lung
Collapse. pushing.
It collapses. Okay, now he shot it between the 10th and 11th rib. So now he's got an X there where the broadhead went through, right? So the source of the blood loss is where the broadhead went through the lung, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now where is the lung now as it starts collapsing? The lungs, when you find a deer dead, the lungs are gathered around the heart. As they collapse, they go forward and they go down. So what happened is the source of the blood from his lung, it started going in. So it's bleeding, but it's bleeding internally. It's not lining up with the hole where the broadhead was.
So you would have to. So like if you hit it high, you have to wait for the blood to fill up in the cavity and then
there's not that much blood in them to fill up. I believe that's a misnomer on that.
Okay.
That's a misnomer on that there to fill up. This just happened to be that the rear of the lung is only 1/8 of an inch thick. It's very, very, very thin. So to begin with, as far as blood loss, you have very minimal blood loss of where it is you're hitting. In fact, I went with a veterinary professor and he said, why would you shoot him in the lungs? A liver's a better shot because I've had 2 veterinarians. One's an anatomy professor and one's another veterinarian. You'll have way more blood loss from a liver shot than you will from a lung. But everybody knows a lung shot is a much quicker death. But it's a combination of both.
I want to touch on that whole thing though, like because I don't want to miss out on this point. When you're saying, and we were just talking about hitting high and filling up with blood, and you're saying that this isn't true, what is your belief at that point? Then if you hit them high, why aren't you getting blood for 50 yards down the blood trail?
Well, okay, I'm trying to think, where do we start there? On a lot of that, I have questions. I don't have answers. You hit them one time and you got a lot of blood. You hit another time, you don't. Now, we know this. If you hit an artery is nothing but the pipe that leaves the heart, and it's under more pressure than the pipe that comes back, which is a vein. Right. So venous blood dribbles out or just bleeds out, where an artery will spray. I'm sure you've seen it before. You hit the artery above the heart, which is what I call my fire hydrant shot.
Yeah.
Poof! Because you're hitting the biggest pump with the most pressure with the biggest pipe. I mean, that's simple to me. And then boof, it comes out.
Right.
On a lung, I've seen them hit super high and just blood spray all over the place. And another question I have, because I'm on a journey, I know a lot, but there's 10 million times that I don't know. They bleed more on the exit hole than the entrance hole. I've noticed that. I don't know if that's just my anecdotal experience. I'm guessing it's a pressure thing. I don't know. Obviously, the farther forward that you hit, the lung's not going to collapse. It's still going to be there. The hole's still going to be there, but it's not going to collapse like Randy's did in the top. But high lung shots can bleed. Now, you're going to bring up the question about going under the backbone and above the lungs.
Right.
Right? Now,
yes. No man's land.
Remember I told you that I'm going to say things that are controversial and I want to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go down these roads, you guys are going to get in trouble for having me on for saying this stuff because they're going to say, I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And you're going to hang the phone up on me right now. That no man's land, right?
There's no such thing.
I'm going to make a statement crazier than that. The lungs go above the backbone.
All right, now we're getting crazy. I wasn't expecting that one.
I got you now.
I knew they go up to the bottom of the backbone for sure.
Okay.
But they're saying they
go above the backbone. Now, Trevor's a butcher, so we're going somewhere with this. Okay. Now, do you remember we talked earlier what causes the lungs to be inflated when you exhale? They're still inflated, even though you're exhaling.
Right.
So all the air is supposed to be lost. So the balloon should be empty, but they're not because of the negative pressure that's on the outside of the lungs that's up against the rib cage and against the diaphragm, that pleural space, that negative pressure. I've studied as hard as I can understand how does that create negative pressure? And it's got to do with fluids transfer and stuff that doesn't make any sense to me. But now watch this. That same negative pressure, which pulls the lungs out against the rib cage, the ribs, if you follow them as you being the butcher, the ribs go above the backbone.
Correct.
If you did cross-sectional view of a deer, if you just took him on a bandsaw, is he's standing there and you went right behind his shoulder blades and you cut straight down behind his front legs, that they're heart-shaped.
Mm-hmm.
They're heart-shaped in the ribs. The ribs are actually jointed. They're ball and socket joints, believe it or not, attached to the back, and they go up. That lung is there. Now I'm going to tell you a story. My son came in. It was dark out, and he says, I just shot a buck. He ran away and dropped it 40 yards, and he ran away crooked. I immediately knew, at least I believed I knew, where he hit him and what happened. The reason he ran away crooked was he hit him in the backbone. Okay. And just like if you get hit in your back or something, you get a pinch and you got to go to the chiropractor. And the reason that he died so quick is that he hit the aorta, and that's the largest blood vessel on a deer that comes out of the heart, and it sticks right to the bottom of the backbone. So he hit that. Well, what happened is when we gutted the deer and I inflated the lungs, I've got all the beautiful photos to prove this. I've got the rib cage, all where the hole went in and went out. I put the arrow back in and showed it. But now what he did, he's up in a tree and he hit the backbone, right? So if there's a dead space below the backbone and where the lung is, he came in above the backbone up in a tree, right? Because he actually hit the backbone. But guess what? I can show you the perfect hole in the aorta and on the entrance side lung, which is above the backbone. I can show you one blade going through there and slicing that lung. And it's just, I've got beautiful photos, but I've got to watch at the right time for me to, as I get going with this, and we're just getting started, to be able to show that. But that is proof on that deer that those lungs were above the backbone, and I put the arrow right back in there. I got pictures inside the rib cage showing it. I got him on the outside of the deer where the arrow went in and where it went out. And I've got the lungs inflated. So, and the truth is, if you go to any medical pulmonologist people, they will all tell you that there is no dead space, because that pleural space actually has the lungs vacuumed to the outside. So there can't be a pleural space there. Or there can't be a dead zone.
So why do they call it the no man's zone then? Like why? Well, and where's the failure in this?
Okay, two things. Possibility. There's two possibilities on that. Because remember, like I said, I've got tons of questions. Is it possible that they're actually, and what most people will tell you is they're actually going above the backbone when they shoot too far forward, because the backbone does not go straight across. That's how come I had my skeleton there at the show that you saw, Trevor. It actually descends from the rear of the lung. It descends all the way down to where the first thoracic vertebrae meets the seventh cervical, which is the neck vertebrae. It comes down at an angle. So, yeah, Jacob said he's trying to get in here.
Oh.
Do you see him? Is that?
No, I didn't see him.
He says he can't see him. But anyway, what happens, the other thing that is possible, now this is theory. This is conjecture. I have no evidence to prove this, but is it possible? And that's one of my journeys I want to find out. Is it possible that the animal could be double lunged and it doesn't die? That there's something about that up there, because the lungs are filled up there. That is, and you talk to any medical people, they're going to tell you that. It's not like I'm some backward hick and I figured this out. It's some common knowledge in the medical world. So the question is, but again, here's the problem. If you don't get the deer, how do we know? Which brings me up, Trevor, to my number one thing that I'm trying to promote is my perfect kill shot documentation project. I don't know if you know this, Steve. My goal is to have 1,000 deer shot on video, and it's got to be good quality video with a lighted nock so you can see exactly where that deer was hit. And then after it is recovered, we record where the arrow went in and where it went out. I mean, we'll actually count ribs. We'll see how far up it is, put the arrow back in, and then we'll examine the gut pile to see what actually was hit. If we can have 1,000 animals that are done like that, that's the only way to get absolute positive proof. My wife and my daughter's a nurse. Oh, take a live animal and take them when they're alive and put them on a medical machine to be able to examine it. You know what? The organs move. That's an animal that's under stress there like that. All that matters is when my broadhead goes through there and I hit him through the 8th rib, what did I hit? That's the real life thing that matters. Now, if they were shot through the lungs and lived, wouldn't you think there'd be people showing on the internet, wow, I shot this buck in the heart, and look at this perfect broadhead hole that's through both lungs? I've never heard that. I have one story that I can tell you from a gentleman who I met at the ATA, and I'm sorry I forgot his name, but he was the bow hunting editor for Bowhunter Magazine's the technical editor for 25 years. He shoots 150 animals a year in Africa. And so when I talked to him all about this medical stuff I'm telling you guys with, he knew it all. I mean, he's just he's right there. And here's a story he told me. And again, this is a story. Remember, I'm about documentation and proof. So but this guy is very credible. He said a guy shot this African animal. I forget what it was. We'll just call it a kudu. Perfect shot. He didn't get it. This gentleman, the editor for this Bowhunter magazine, went out there and shot the same animal that afternoon when it was breeding a female kudu. And his broadhead was exactly 2 inches away from where that other guy hit it. When he gutted him out, he saw his broadhead hole through both lungs, and there was another broadhead hole where that other guy hit it earlier there. But I don't have proof of that. I'm desperate and dying. Why do you think I'm wanting to document this stuff? I don't care what anybody believes. I want it documented.
So it's crazy. So we actually had something crazy that happened within, some of our teammates. Seth, who's on our team, he shot a deer and thinking that it was a very good shot, and he tracked it forever, couldn't find it, so on and so forth. And almost 30 days later, was it 30 days, Steve?
28, I think.
28 days later, the neighbor found his buck, and it actually had blood poisoning from where he shot it, and he didn't, it wasn't a kill shot, still lived. He lunged it, and then the neighbor found it, and it was dying with blood poison or poison, septic, and it ended up dying. It was 28 days later and he ended up getting the deer. But he did kind of, the breakdown like you do with, taking the skin off, exposing the ribs, looking at everything, dissecting it, really tearing into it, and how he had shot it. But
did he hit both lungs?
No, one.
Okay, this now we're opening up a whole bunch of stuff. So let's go into, because I got to make sure if this gets too long, we finish the story of my elk. We got to make sure we do that.
Yeah, so take right back into the elk, because what happened with your elk in research to kind of put this all together?
Okay, I can just tell you this of what my theory is based on the physiology of death, what happened. But it's theory. I can't prove it. They found him and he was full of maggots. So I didn't get a chance to examine it myself. But I can tell you this. I can show you the video where the arrow went in, the blood coming out, and I saw where it came out and it went through both lungs. And they've got pictures of that as well, even though the animal was decomposed. So let's take all the stuff that we've learned about the lungs collapse and everything. I was shooting an Exodus broadhead. My arrow went through the bull, but when I picked it up, it was covered with bubbles on the arrow, just like it should have been. But I only had 2 blades. So now I went in with 2 blades. He bled and he totally stopped. Not a drop, not a speck. And I mean, we spent forever, not getting head, going down every trail over and over just to try to find him. Anyway, long story short, what I believe ended up happening was this. I made a smaller hole with 2 blades. He ran and he stopped. The hole, he quit bleeding. The same thing that would cause the lung to collapse, remember, outside air getting in, right? Mm-hmm. Is the same thing that the blood didn't come out. So the blood's not coming out. Something stopped that. And then the air's not coming in. So his lung did not collapse right away. And he did not run. He just stood there.
Wow.
So now that air could have got pushed back out to that extent. Now he's not running. And what do they say when you get injured? What do you do about your heart? Calm down. Because your heart is a pump. Boom, 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 boom. And it's pumping all the blood out as well, right? And as it's pumping, it's sucking more air in as you get excited. He just stood there and looked at us bewildered. I mean, he's going to drop. I was talking. If you're going down right there, I got you. I mean, I got him. I mean, he was dead. I mean, there's no question about it. I didn't got to watch him drop. He's dead. I'm going to get my stuff. Well, what I believe happened is that hole closed up, that he didn't get enough air in him. I only hit big lungs on a bigger animal with 2 blades. So now the amount of blood loss I hit If I didn't hit a major vein, I didn't hit an artery, I just hit capillaries, the little tiny ones. So now I've got a combination of a very slow bleed with the air, depending on whether that he walked and moved in that hole, got air in it to collapse the lungs. So that is why he lived for a fact. I can say this. He did not have enough blood loss because of the smaller broadhead. If I would have had a rage broadhead with that bigger hole in there, guess what? That hole would not have sealed up. That air would have been in there and he would have dropped right there. That's so now again, when we get into broadheads, that's like religion. It's controversial, right?
Right.
I'm dealing with science. And if I would have hit, because my wife won't let me use a rage or an expandable, you got to use these solids we love the Exodus, but the blade broke. And I love Exodus broadheads, but there is a flaw on it. They're attached only at the very front. And they're 40 thousandths thick. But I believe my theory is the arrow was spinning and it caught the rear of the blade as it went in and hit the rib, and that spinning force snapped it off. I mean, why else would it break off? We've shot them in bones. They're as solid as can be, those Exodus broadheads. But I got my arrow still to this day.
So
it snapped off.
So when you talk broadheads, why wouldn't you shoot a mechanical if you want the biggest hole possible to be able to do what you want to do, right? Like that kind of contradicts what you were saying before, because you wanted to have the biggest hole possible so you can let the air out of this diaphragm.
You caught me.
Come on.
You got me, Trevor. You got me. Okay, here we go. There's two types of broadheads. Now, this is my opinion. They're in two categories, but this is from the anatomy hunter physiological standpoint. Two types. There's bone broadheads and there's tissue or gut broadheads. Because here's where it is. A perfect shot with any broadhead is going to kill the animal. Mm-hmm. Mine was freaky things happen. And we know freaky things that don't make sense do happen. I mean, but that's life.
Right.
But so here is the two different broadheads. And here's what this has to do with. It has to do with where do you aim at an animal to kill it. There's two basic philosophies of where you aim at an animal. I mean, everyone's got their opinion.
Right.
But the two basic theories is this. Remember the patent I told you I've got? It's called the perfect kill shot patent. That is simply this. Where is the spot that's the largest spot in an animal that I can shoot at and miss it and still go high, low, right, or left and still kill the animal? I want to make the biggest paper plate on that animal I can. That's the Brian Johnson kill shot. For me, I'm not a good shot. Then there is the quickest kill shot. Well, that is the fire hydrant shot. You take the aorta artery, not on the heart, on the top of the heart, and you just cut that right off. So that you still got the heart pumping. You cut that thing there, and they go down right now. And in Texas, I spent 5 weeks in Texas doing research last winter. The two of the people that I hunted with, they hunt these pigs. They hunt in this real thick brush. They go for what I coined the fire hydrant shot, because they don't want these animals, especially nilgai, they don't want them to go anywhere to have to track them. And so they aim there. But here's the problem. And this has got to do with the broadhead. And I'm answering your question. If you go for the aorta shot, people call it the heart shot, right? Here's what happens. The animals drop. Now, if they drop, guess what can happen? You put the broadhead in the shoulder blade. The number one wounded animal spot, I have been told, and that's a show that I want to do, from dog recovery experts. They use the dogs to recover the deer. The number one wound that they track that they don't get are shoulder shots. And that's because they shoot for the heart. They either shoot high there in a tree, because now you're high in a tree, the deer's closer, you may make a good shot, but the shoulder blade's in the way.
Right.
Right?
Is it offside shoulder or
let's just take broadside.
Okay.
It's just broadside, to keep it real simple.
Okay.
You make a perfect shot and that deer drops and your broadhead goes through the shoulder, gets stuck in there and it runs away. So if you're taking that shot there, the bigger expandables are not going to penetrate as much through that shoulder as you are on I call these new solids, these new ones like what's the iron will, those there now. Now, the problem with the iron will and that whole group that's coming out, and I saw a new one I saw today.
We have day 6. You have a couple of them that are in that.
Oh, they got a lot of them. They got a lot of them. But here's the problem with them. They work so good at penetrating through bone that there's people out there pushing. You can ignore the skeletal structure and just shoot because you're going to go right through it. Well, that's allowed people to aim differently. And the guy that I was with this last fall tracking wounded deer, as a result of that teaching, that's kind of the hot trend right now. Don't worry about the shoulder blade. Use these solid broadheads. He's got all these deer that are shot in the shoulder because of that. It's still not a good thing to do that. And the farther forward you go, the smaller the lungs become.
Right.
That's another thing there. Now, Joel Maxfield, you familiar with him? He is the Matthews archery kind of, he's their lead guy. He's in the Pope and Young Grand Slam Club. He's a Rage broadhead guy. Okay. He's an expandable guy. And I was showing him when I'm doing at the show. I've met him a couple of times before. I've got another business. I sell dart targets and stuff, and I sold them when I met him. And I had at the show there, I didn't get a chance to show you this, Trevor, but I had the 2 kill shots there. The fire hydrant shot, which is a disc that's say 6 inches. And then I had the perfect kill shot, which is back farther, just behind the shoulder blade, which is like 8 inches. So it's a bigger kill zone. He uses a Rage broadhead, but he stays away from the heart or the shoulder blade or the humerus bone, or it's called the olecranon on its elbow. He stays away and he shoots back farther.
So like a center of center kind of thing with like a bear type deal?
Not that far back.
Okay.
Just back far enough that he cannot hit the shoulder blade. He said exactly where I put my disc, where I claim to shoot, which is basically the crease. It's only 2 inches behind the heart.
Okay.
Only 2 inches behind the heart, but that 2 inches takes you away from the olecranon and it takes you away from the shoulder blade. So that way he knows if he even goes back and hits the liver or the guts, which you don't want to do, but remember, we're dealing with the broadhead. What happens if you make a bad shot? He knows that animal is dead and he's going to leave it alone. So to him, it's very simple. Use a great big broadhead and aim back farther than everybody else is doing.
And I feel as if that a lot of people are doing that more shooting center of mass type deal, I guess you would call it, right? Where they're shooting for that bigger wide open, less chance of hitting some type of bone, and then just leaving it for a longer period of time than getting on it in an hour. They're leaving it for that 6, 7, 8 hour mark and then going and finding it, especially a big deer where they don't have to mess around with some of those bigger bones in the front end of the deer.
Well, how about if we split the middle? If we go just that 2 inches behind the heart, so we're not going to hit the bones, but we're not so far back that when the lungs are in the expiration process, that we're not going to get behind them, because remember, the liver is attached to the diaphragm, so that's moving.
Right.
That's moving right with it. So, in fact, I'm doing a Canadian bear hunt with the bear professor, and he's wanting to dispel this middle of the middle deal that people shoot bears there.
Right.
So we're going to Canada with 3 of us and hunting, and we're going to use 3 different broadheads. And we're going to try to shoot back farther so that we can actually document what we hit by inflating the lungs and skinning them out and doing what I do. So I'm really excited about that.
So talking about bears, I guess with bear season coming up and all this and all of us kind of it's on our minds, what is your theory and thoughts on the center of center before you're going into this, right? Like,
well, I can already tell you this. Remember,
Okay.
my background is a taxidermy sculptor, right? And I sculptured white-tailed deer and black bears. Okay. The anatomy on a bear, not the lungs, just the anatomy of the size of the chest of a bear, they are the opposite of a deer. A deer, as they get older, the shoulders get bigger. I mean, it's just like in a largemouth bass, just like us as humans. When you're smaller, when you're thin, as you get older, you get bigger shoulders, right? The deer, a bit older deer, isn't just a bigger deer. He's broader, he's thicker, he's wider, right? A bear's not that way. They're thin right behind the shoulders. As they go back, their body structure gets bigger and their lungs go back with that. So a farther back shot on a bear gives you the largest pie plate of the kill zone. But going back to the center of the center, there we go again. Why go back that far? That's too far. But obviously they shoot them in the center of center. Those lungs go back there. They're going to get them. But what's happening is they're shooting at the edge of the rear of the lung there.
Right.
And then guess what if they come forward? So why take that chance? That's where I'm on the journey to try to make the absolute perfect shot to give you the most degree of error to miss and still kill the animal.
So you want to try and shoot for that crease also on a bear.
Well, back a little farther. No, back farther on a bear because the lungs are smaller there. If you hit them there, you've got them. But your height of the lungs at that point is very narrow. It's amazing how small they are. I had the bear at the show there, by the way.
I saw it. I did see it. Oh, I did.
Yeah, and that's a complete skeleton I put back. And what I did, Steve, is the bear that I shot, I've got it on video. I took the ribs when I cleaned them, and I left the meat on my entrance hole and exit hole. So when I put that back in the bear that I'm sculpturing and mounting it, that is the hole where it went in. That is the hole where it went out. It's not a reproduction of it.
The thing that scares me about bears the most, compared to deer, because I've shot a lot more deer than I have bear, is a lot more fat and a lot more fur. So going back to what you said earlier with the hole closing back up.
Yep.
I shot my biggest bear. Oh, geez, we're going back 2011, 2012. I shot, looking back on it now, is closer to that center shot, not intentionally. You know, I was trying to shoot it behind the shoulder. I pulled it a little bit. I told the guide, I hit him a little far back, like I'm thinking back along liver shot, you know, and we had a hard time finding him. He didn't go that far, maybe 100 yards. But it's thick Canadian brush, you know.
Yeah.
Not a lot of blood. But we found him. I hit him right where I thought I hit him. But this is a spring bear. It was Memorial Day weekend, and we skunned the bear, and then took the fat off of the carcass, and there was 30 pounds of fat on the ribs.
Wow.
That's the one thing that puts bear in a different category to me compared to deer.
I agree.
I'm gearing up to go back again this spring, and I'm reevaluating what I'm going to bring for a broadhead just because of that.
And here's the other thing on bears versus deer. How do you think the ribs are on a bear versus a deer? Size-wise, tough-wise, penetration-wise. Big old, mean old tough bears. How big do you think their ribs are compared to a deer?
They're definitely bigger. Thicker, stronger?
They're way smaller.
Really?
Yeah, bears got real skinny ribs. And for the very reasons that you guys said.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm thinking about it now. Like a pig compared to a pig to a beef.
Yeah.
Like pigs got those little tiny baby back ribs.
Yeah, bears' ribs are rounder. They're skinnier. They don't have the big flat to them. They don't amount to much. And they don't bleed, whether that is physiological, whether it's the hair, whether it's I've shot 6 bears. I've never had one go over 50 yards. And I've never had a blood trail at all. I mean, I just have some blood, but right. I mean, it's some blood. And I mean, I watch them go down. So, but that's why now, if you take a look at what you just said there, you got fat, you don't have to worry about bones. You can shoot farther back, which means if the lungs are forward a little bit, moving just in the breathing process, you shoot back a little bit, you hit guts. So what do you want for that type of shot? If there's an animal to use a big broadhead on,
right,
that'd be the one to do. Absolutely.
Right. Plus, typically close range, you're hunting over bait. Yeah. So you have a 17-yard shot. He's standing right there.
But you get nervous though I think when animals are too close, sometimes it's harder because you get more nervous, and you want to rush it because you think you can't miss. He's right there. Or the farther away you can aim a little bit more.
It's very true. Very.
You think so?
Sometimes.
Yeah. It's right there. I got to shoot him. He's right there. I got to go. It's not you're rushing as opposed to a longer one. I got to aim and I got to concentrate and do the stuff. But
last one I shot. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when it comes to broadheads, now where you aim determines the broadhead. If you're going to be a heart shooter, you got to worry about bones. You got to have a broadhead with bones. Now, what if you shoot an expandable and you're shooting 80 pounds, and you still got the power to go through it? Well, that's a different story. Here's my situation going elk hunting. I fell on my driveway a year ago in March. I'm totally crippled up on my left shoulder. I got 5 torn muscles, 2 are atrophied. I can't hold a can of Coke out to my side like you'd hold a bowl for even a minute. Really bad. So what I do is I got a crutch made like a regular gun stick, for shooting, holding a gun there. Or what do you call the bipod or single pod. I'm going to put my arm on that. My friend owns Gearhead Archery, which you guys know, Skip. He made me one out of graphite, little guy, and I can pull 40 pounds. It hurts, but I'm going to see if I can get to 50 pounds so I can go elk hunting in Montana, which is what I love. I am planning on using a smaller broadhead like the Iron Will and going for more of a heart shot, which I would not do as much because I'm at so low poundage on a big animal. So my situation is different than if you guys are shooting 70 pounds and you can go through with a bigger broadhead. I mean, the bigger, the better.
Right.
Especially if you end up gut shooting an animal. And that's another reason you got a bigger one, you can aim back a little more.
So it's kind of crazy in the broadhead that I use, and I just want to kind of hear a little bit of maybe some of your thoughts on this, honestly. And so they have like the new hybrid, right? Which is, flies, fixed blade. I see Steve in the background like, what? Oh, geez, here we go. Flies fixed. When contacted with bone, it collapses down to 7/8 of an inch, goes through the bone, and then expands back up to 2.5 inches.
You're talking the Beast.
No, not 2.5.
An inch and a half, sorry.
Inch and a half.
Well, here's what I got to do. I've got to stay in my lane of what I know. And what I don't know, my opinion's no better than anybody else's.
Okay.
And we're trying to make as big a hole through them as we can. So I deal with the quality of the steel. Like, I'll tell you something on Exodus, because I've got to not push anything because I'm not going to be sponsored by anybody.
Right.
So I haven't automotive. But I can tell you this about Exodus. Even though on that elk, it broke, right?
Right.
Their steel that they have, they're limited on them being able to get it. That quality is so much that the Exodus broadhead blades are not stamped. They're actually EDM cut out. And that's directly from them telling me, because the quality you can shoot with an Exodus through an animal and about 50% of the time shave with it after it's gone through with it.
Wow. What is your thoughts on that Beast broadhead?
Again, I've never seen it.
Right.
I don't know. Randy Ulmer, who's my hero, right?
Yeah.
He made the Ulmer Edge, which ends up now it's transitioned or is the same thing as what's that other one called? It's the one where it pivots in the middle. It's just two blades that pivots. Sever.
Yep. So that's what Steve shoots, is a severed.
Yeah. So, but Randy Ulmer's original one, I got it. I still got some. The blades were dull as could be. So maybe it's a great design, but what's the quality of the metal? What's the quality of the steel? Like every time I talk to you, Trevor, how do you sharpen your knives, Trevor? How do you sharpen your knives?
Yeah.
I'm really big into sharp, and more sharp.
Okay.
The sharper is the better as far as cutting. And then the bone and stuff. And that's how come I know. Mm-hmm. We took broadheads and we took moose bones we brought back from Canada, the big heavy duty leg bones, and we shot them in there. And that's where a friend of mine that was all into muzzies. And again, I can't have a dog in the fight, but I've got to speak the truth. He shot the muzzy into it. It just disintegrated, fell into pieces. And I'm not sure which one it was. I know they make a lot of them. When he shot the Exodus, I've still got it, and I showed the Exodus people my video of it. It went all the way through that bone there, and it shows the blades twisting, and they held together.
Not to knock on the whole Muzzy thing, but Muzzy isn't the same company as it was back in the day when we would shoot it in the early 90s. It's not, because it was an American-made company, which is now, and I'm not trying to knock a company or talk down on any type of company, but now they use not so good non-American made metals like they used to be. It used to be bad to the bone. It's no longer bad to the bone, in my opinion.
Yeah. Brian, I got a question for you though. Let's get away from big bones and let's get back to ribs.
Okay.
In your opinion, how do I say this? How much fear should a hunter have when it comes to ribs? When it comes to smaller animals like deer and bear? Figure most guys are shooting somewhere around 70 pounds, 65 to 70 pounds.
Nothing.
It shouldn't even be a thought, right?
No. But there's some weird things. We worry about arrows ricocheting, right? Okay.
Yep.
Going to ribs, and then all the controversy of the cutting at first versus having the great big ones which deflect off. I've got on video, Trevor, when you were down at the show, do you remember that there was a deer, Steve, that was shot? He ran away with his arrow sticking out of him. Looked like a perfect shot.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was, is this deer dead or alive? Well, guess what happened?
It was alive.
He came back a month later and it was alive.
That's right.
Well,
I remember that.
Now there's another part to that story I didn't play because of people got mad when I showed them. That same deer came back again. The guy shot it again. And he used a broadhead and he hit the white belly fur where there was no ribs. And it ricocheted down off just the belly fur, down, and it bounced right back up on the other side of him above his back there. And he lived again. I mean, it would have been a gut shot that would have cut his guts open and he would have died. But it ricocheted off, and yet there was no bones to make it ricochet.
Wow.
So that's, there's just so many things to this that we think are black and white. And it's just like, why did that happen? How did that happen? So, but it did.
So some of the questions I have for you, honestly, Brian, is what is the future of Anatomy Hunter and what can people do to be part of it or help you out, or what are you trying to do and get out of all of this?
Okay, here's what I need. Well, this is a mission that I said I believe called of God. I've got 2 years to do it. I'm already a year in, and then I'm off. Then I go back working for Reinhardt doing sculptures. What I need is for the Perfect Kill Shot Documentation Project, which I explained earlier, is 1,000 videos that show precisely where the deer was shot. And then it's going to be recorded how far it went when the animal is found. Detailed photos. Here's where it went in. Detailed photos where it went out. Detailed photos of the gut pile. What was the blood trail? What was the broadhead used? The poundage. All the details. So then in these videos, I'm calling Anatomy Hunt videos. I want people to make their own and submit them to me. There'd be a maximum of 5 minutes. The first minute, I want a bio of the hunter themselves. I'm wanting to do this different. People are not getting into hunting. We're not selling licenses in Wisconsin anymore. People are into games and they're not understanding the value of what hunting does for them, of being in the woods and these experiences. So I want every person being interviewed for a minute of, why do you hunt? What do you get out of this? What makes you tick of why you do this? So I want the beginning of the hunt centered around that, then the hunt itself, and then we're going to do a split screen that as soon as the animal is shot, so the lighted knock is there, we stop it. And then it's going to show the lighted knock and the animal, and 3 questions will come on the screen. Is this a kill shot? How far would the animal go before it died? And what organs do you think were hit? So then they actually get points for it, like we did at the show when I met you, Trevor. They actually 20 points for this side or the other. Then, like a crime scene, we play it fast forward. We get to see how the deer ran away. Did it have its tail up or did it have its tail down? Did it run and stop? Did it keep going? We picked the arrow up. So as we give more evidence, then they can start changing this. What I'm wanting to do is making the Anatomy Hunter interactive, a hunting show with the person watching it. I'm wanting to make it fast-paced, and I'm wanting to make it exciting to watch. So if you have 1,000 of these, you could get together a Friday night instead of watching a basketball game or the football game or something. Let's go down. Let's challenge each other to some of these Anatomy Hunters. There's some new ones posted on there. You could sit down there and actually keep score like a sport, but you're doing it. You're being entertained because each one's a 5-minute hunting show. You get to watch a guy shoot a deer, like when you shot the turkeys that you sent me. Okay. But then you're also, when it's done, you're getting to actually learn and see what took place, where they hit them there and what broadhead they used, how it went. So I need 2 things. I need people to submit me those. And I'm desperate to get editors. I want people that would, because these edits can be very simple. They don't need to be complex, because we have not been able to get anybody to be able to edit us, because I need to be out in the workshop and not dealing with all the technical stuff like this is here. So that's where I need some people that would either work for, 2-3 things that they'd work for a cheaper price, or they donate just one a year or something like that. So that's what I need, because that's what the goal is there.
Fantastic.
So, in other words, it would be a library for people to go and see and learn real life, real hands-on situations.
Amazing. Brian,
that's what it is. And then with that, I'm doing the same thing with the dogs too. Okay.
With the dog. The dog tracking, right?
Yeah. And that's going to be called the episode with that show is going to be called Wanted, Dead or Confirmed Alive. Because if you're a dog recovery expert, you're tracking a deer with your dog. Your job is to find the dead deer, or to be able to confirm that it's still alive. So thus the name of my show, Wanted Dead. Yeah, I want him dead, but if he's not dead, I want to confirm that he's alive.
Right.
Pretty cool name, huh?
Fantastic. I love it. We had actually we had done a very good series with a dog tracker, and it's actually incredible. Some of the things that they go through and how they work and so on and so forth. It's just it was we had to do it 2-part because it was just absolutely incredible.
Well, who knows more than those guys do, because they track them, they find them, they see what's live. They're the real experts.
And the art that goes into that is just incredible. The scientific background of the dogs and how they work, and it is totally mind-blowing, for sure.
Yeah, it blew my mind. They claim the dog can speak to them and they know whether the deer is dead or alive.
That's right.
And I wouldn't believe it, but I've had a number of them tell me that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've heard it right here on the Outdoor Drive. You know, you can tell with the dog and how the dog reacts if the deer is still alive just by, the stuff that comes out of the hooves and that it's just insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Brian, I have one last question for you, my friend, and I want to know what drives you outdoors.
What drives me outdoors? My wife and I are talking about it. When I'm sitting in a tree or being in the woods, we talked about today, being bored. Right now, everybody is fast. They're on their phones. They're doing this. Everything's fast. To be able to be out there, what is it like to be out there in the dark? And when the sun comes up, you hear the first bird. You hear the first crunch, crunch, crunch. Oh, my heart goes. I'm a little kid. I'll never get over that. The experiences of just being in the woods and just enjoying all that there's to it. Getting the deer is 50% of it. I want to get a deer. I want to eat them. I want to gut them. I want to examine them. Don't get me wrong. But just being able to be out in the woods and experiencing that is something that is so precious. So precious. So it is. So, and you know how I learned that, why that's precious to me? We've attended a lot of different churches, and we attended a Mennonite church. And you know what they did? You go in there, instead of talking, hey, how you doing fishing? What about this? Talk to your buddies. Okay, church time starts. Now shut up. No, you walk in and you sit down and everybody was quiet and you stilled yourself and it allowed you to have your mind thinking of the things of God. And when I go in the woods, I'm thinking, you know what? That's what I'm doing in the woods. I'm just experiencing this. And if people could see what a wonderful experience it is being there, hearing all the noises in the woods and all the things, it's just wonderful. Seeing the sunrise, there's nothing like the sunrise in the morning and hearing the woods come alive. I mean, I don't want to call it a spiritual experience, but it's, if people said it was, I could say I could relate to them when they say that, because it's just great. And I miss it so much because I work and I work and I work and I work and I work. I miss it.
You'll be out spring bear hunting before you know it. I'm actually looking forward to hearing the stories of it and how it actually panned out for you guys.
Oh, I can't wait. In fact, Skip Peterson's going to be one of them.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see it, see the pictures, hear the stories. It's we might actually have to do another podcast just on the bear hunt to kind of follow up on how this all works out. So, Brian, one last thing. Can you just tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find the Anatomy Hunter, how they can kind of get in contact if it needs be?
Well, we're just starting. And like I said, we're having difficulties with editing and things. And our website is supposed to come out here in a few days. So hopefully by the time this airs next week, we'll have at least a start of what it is.
Okay.
But we have a long ways to go to have what I call just a foundation laid of what it is that I want to do. Because as you can see, teaching all this stuff, if we're teaching it, but I want to teach it with a dead animal. I want to teach it and actually show it, not talk about it. So those are the videos we want. So
is there like an email or something that people can kind of reach out?
info@anatomyhunter.org.
Fantastic.
Yep, that's it.
So if somebody has some documentation of some sort or whatever, they want to ask some questions or whatever the case may be, that's probably the best place to contact you, right, Brian?
Yeah, that's what we have going. That's right. Yep, that's it.
Fan-
And I want to thank you, Trevor and Steve, so much
Hey,
for giving me this opportunity.
thank you, Brian. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
I think that it's a friendship that will last forever. We really appreciate you jumping on. It has been a great show. I think we're definitely going to have some more as this kind of unveils. I like to kind of read into, as this, and I will follow along with you, and hopefully we can bring something back to our guests here in the future. Brian and Doris, it was a pleasure meeting you guys, and thanks so much. And for everyone else, thanks for taking the ride.
I got to leave you one last question. You got to be able to teach me how to sharpen a knife before we're done.
Yeah, that's right. We can do that. Hey, well, and for everybody else, thanks for taking the ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.